Now, when it comes to Skylanders, many of them take inspiration from many different themes that come from our world. There's ninjas like Stealth Elf, Stink Bomb, and Boom Bloom. There's robots like Wind Up, Bouncer, and Magna Charge. And there's even dragons, who have had new additions from nearly every game in the franchise. But there is nothing in Skylanders as prevalent as knights. Knights go all the way back to the first game, starting off with Skylanders like Chop Chop and Igniter before spiraling into absolute insanity with knight-like characters or knight-inspired characters popping up everywhere. There's so many of them to the point where if you gathered every dragon-based Skylander and every knight-based Skylander and told them to fight each other, the dragons would get the jumping of the century. I do not care what you tell me, Spyro is not saving them from those hands. What I'm basically trying to say is that there are so many knight-based Skylanders that I could practically use them as a farm for my channel. But today, I'm going to pick the cream of the crop. And by the cream of the crop, I basically mean I just know them from the top of my head. So I'm actually going to be covering 4 Skylanders this time, and if you're wondering why I'm ignoring Superchargers and Imaginators, that's because 1, I don't want to cover 6 Skylanders in one video at once, and 2, Superchargers has pissed me off recently with the Darkness book, so I'll be dealing with that later. But with everything out of the way, let's get on to the Knights of Skylands.
Slash and burn.
Okay, I already hear the comments asking me why I'm not going over Chop Chop because he's basically a knight in everything except name, but there's a good reason I'm not talking about him today. So for right now, we're going over the other knight from Spyro's Adventures roster, Igniter, and with all things considered, his story is still interesting enough to talk about. Before he went by the name of Igniter, Igniter went by the name of Ignatius, a young knight with squeaky armor and a rusty sword, and his first task as a new knight was to slay a red dragon. On his way to slay the dragon, he would meet a witch who would present him with a special gift, a shiny new set of armor that she said would protect him from the dragon's fire breath. But unfortunately for Ignatius, the witch was peddling the snake oil equivalent of knight armor. When the dragon scorched him with his fire breath, instead of the armor protecting him, it instead bonded to him permanently as he burned alive, turning him into a fire spirit. Even though he was maimed beyond recognition, he somehow managed to kill the dragon and decided that this knight stuff probably wasn't for him, so he became a Skylander instead. Now, there's a lot of stuff that I want to go over, and the first thing I want to talk about is his armor. Now, this may just be me, but his armor looks extremely Archean in design. If you put Chop Chop and Igniter next to each other and change the colors, it looks like they came from the same place, which may explain how the Archeans became robots. See, there's been this theory that the Archeans used to be organic before they turned themselves into robots later on, this theory being supported by the fact that Chop Chop has bones, and I think this process may have involved bonding with the tech element. We already seen machine ghosts and giants, and considering the fact that Igniter is a flame spirit, we can only assume that that's how the Archeans existed as robots. They became spirits using some sort of method that involved the tech element, and inhabit whatever Archean armor that they could. And the reason why the Archeans were specifically machine spirits was because it was far more convenient and they just wouldn't be able to jump out of their armor. Once again, there's a lot of holes in this theory, but it makes a lot of sense if we go with the idea that the armor used to be Archean, but it isn't 100% confirmed, so for now it's just me spitballing ideas around. So with Igniter said and done, let's move on to the next Skylander.
Stay cool.
Now, compared to most Skylanders, Chill is pretty standout because of how human she looks, considering the fact that human Skylanders are never seen in Skylands, and the fact that she's the only knight-related Skylander from Skylanders Giants. It's actually kinda crazy considering the fact that she came from a roster that consisted of 16 Skylanders. But with that out the way, let's get right into the lore. Chill comes from the Ice Kingdom, where she used to hold the position of the captain of the Royal Guard, gaining the respect of all who knew her, in combat and otherwise. She was on track to becoming a legend within her kingdom, but as time went on, tragedy would strike. At the time, the Cyclops' army began to expand their empire into the northern realms of Skylands, and when she was on guard one night, an army of Cyclopses managed to kidnap the Queen of the Ice Kingdom from right under her nose. And Chill would never forgive herself for it. It isn't explicitly explained how the people of the Ice Kingdom reacted to this, but from what I can assume, most people blamed Chill for what happened. But that didn't really matter because shortly afterwards, Chill would leave the Ice Kingdom. It would wander for some time before joining the Skylanders. During her work as a Skylander, she felt like she had found a purpose again, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, but she would always keep a lookout for the long-lost queen that she failed so long ago. Chill doesn't appear, or at least doesn't have a major appearance anywhere else, which as of writing this is pretty weird because Skylanders from Giants and earlier would usually have extra lore hidden around somewhere, but there is one thing I found. and that was the legendary Chill statue. According to the Skylanders wiki, if a Skylander wins a gladiator-style event that's been part of the Skylanders culture for centuries, they would become immortalized in a golden statue that special portal masters can use whenever the world is in peril. And what makes this cool is that only 23 out of the 180 Skylanders have had a statue made of them, which means she may be one of the best combatants out of all the other Skylanders, which is a feat in and of itself. But with that out the way, let's move on to the next Skylander.
Blast and Furious!
Now, the next Skylander we're going to be talking about is a SWAT Force member who goes by the name of Blast Zone, and unlike most Skylanders in this video, Blast Zone is actually a starter Skylander. But with that out the way, let's get on to the lore. Before Blast Zone was a member of the SWAT Force, he was a young Furnace Knight who used to be a member of the Skylanders Bomb Squad. You heard me correctly, but keep that in the back of your mind for just a minute. The Bomb Squad's purpose was to disarm and remove bombs left by trolls across Skylands, but over time, the trolls would get sick of the squad thwarting their plans over and over again. Specifically, Blast Zone. One night, a group of trolls would go to his village in the middle of the night and dump 100 bombs down his house's chimney. So, how do you think Blast Zone reacted to this high-pressure situation where every second counted? That's right, he immediately reminds the audience that this is a kid's game and proceeds to eat every last bomb before they explode. And when they do explode, he belches out a jet of fire back out of his chimney, lighting the trolls on fire and sending them packing. This whole event eventually reached the ears of Eon, who would go to his village and personally invite him to become a member of the SWAT Force, which the Furnace Knight would accept. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to go over, and the first thing is the existence of the Bomb Squad, because it's a good opportunity to talk about something I wanted to talk about for a long time. What is the politics of Skylands? There seems to be hundreds of thousands of kingdoms and factions, yet we never get to see conflicts between them unless the Skylanders are involved. Like, what series of events led up to the Frost Elves coming into conflict with the Cyclopses? Does it have anything to do with the Ice Kingdom? Are they part of the aforementioned Ice Kingdom? I want answers. And secondly, the Giants and SWAT Force members are in a pretty tragic situation. When it comes to all of the other Skylanders, they were trapped on Earth as statues for, at most, a few years. But the Giants and SWAT Force members were stuck there for centuries. All their friends they made in their past, all the family they grew to love, are just gone now. And it's even worse for the Giants. They're in a completely new world, but from what I can tell, most of them have adjusted pretty well to their new surroundings. So, let's get on to the final Skylander of the video.
Nowhere to hide!
Now, when Nightmare released back in 2014, it was a huge deal. This was the first time we got new elements in Skylanders, and her lore section is the bane of my damn existence. If you can spot it before the lore section ends, you get a head pat, but with that out the way, let's get started. Before the destruction of the Core of Light stranded her in the Dark Realm, she was one of the Dark Centaurs who guarded the Oracle of the Stone, a enchanted game of dark sky stones that could predict the future. When it was stolen by an unknown force, Nightmare was called upon to retrieve it, and she knew that it would be a dangerous task because if the Oracle was asked the wrong question 7 times, it would curse the entirety of Skylands. When she found the Oracle in a cave, it was surrounded by Biclopses, whatever those are supposed to be, and they were about to ask the final wrong question, so she quickly pummeled them and returned the Oracle back to where it belonged, and afterwards she would become a member of the Skylanders. Now, I think this is the first time that I've ever seen a story from Skylanders that was bad. This story was so all over the place that after reading it, I simply asked myself, what did I just look at? This story was so nonsensical that I actively went searching for other sources to confirm if this story was real or not. But it also creates a huge plot hole that is so big that it completely screws up the timeline. There was never a point in Skylanders where the Core of Light was destroyed, so I don't even know why it's part of her story. Even though she has a terrible story, it doesn't mean everything surrounding her was bad. She surprisingly has a friendship/rivalry with the Light Skylander by the name of Nightlight in the Light in the Dark comic. But with that out of the way, this is where the video is going to end. I know this video was longer than normal, but I'd like you guys to comment down below and let me know if you'd rather have me do 3 Skylanders or 4 Skylanders. But before I go, I would like to give you guys some insight into why I nearly flipped my stuff when I saw Nightmare's bio for the first time, and that's because of the Archean video. That video alone is becoming one of the most annoying projects I ever worked on, and the reason I say that is because the Archeans have such a vague and complex history that it makes it almost a chore to do research for them, me having to bounce around multiple different wikis just to put everything together, but thankfully research is almost done. I can finally get back to working on it, and if all goes well, that video will be coming out sooner rather than later. Like always, hit the subscribe button if you enjoy content like this, share this around so I can grow as a channel, and I'll see you guys next time.